Hey folks, Craig Danger, vinyl record player. Oh, back again, and you know what? Today we're talking about spectacular second albums. We're going to talk about 5 of them, of course, and stick around to the end. I'm not saying there's a bonus. There could be. A lot of people, of course, talk about the sophomore slump, and how some of those second albums can be a little sucky. Well, not these, my friends. None of these albums you will see today are slumping. In fact, I would say they're pumping. So do as you do when you're hanging out with Craig Danger. And of course, pay careful regard to your safety. And you can do that easily by buckling up. And we're back, and of course we're talking about second LPs that were just either fantastic on their own or, maybe even blew the doors off of that first LP in terms of improvement. And this one, I think, if you've seen the channel before, you may have seen me talk about Astral Weeks from 1968 by Van Morrison. Not necessarily the fairest comparison because, of course, his first album, Blowing Your Mind, was kind of hastily put together. A single, obviously, Brown Eyed Girl became a big hit, and they're like, oh, let's put together an album. This was, I believe, really the first opportunity for Van to just kind of sit down and really shine. I've talked about this album before. Again, this one is very unique because basically he came in with the most basic and bare bones of songs, and with the help of basically about 3 or 4 really kind of well-known jazz musicians, he basically made what I would really call his classic. Really kind of his real debut album. Obviously, anyone who had purchased Brown Eyed Girl expecting it to be on this, wrong. Nothing like that on here at all. But again, this album is very folky. It's jazzy. It's just an epic album. Certainly from the very start, the title track that starts this out absolutely sets the table for what is just it's an experience of an album, I would say. Very much a Sunday record, very chill, a lot of sort of repetitive lines by Van. But again, it's just remarkable that the musicians behind this really were given very little. And wow, did they ever make absolute gold out of straw. So Van Morrison, Astral Weeks, in my opinion, I'm not sure that he ever really topped this. Gotta be honest. This was, I think, sort of a unique moment in time for Van. Of course, it's again worth noting that some of the background musicians here, including, of course, Richard Davis on bass, who basically kind of ended up leading the project. Absolutely fantastic stuff. One of the interesting points about this album also is that, basically Van Morrison was not a jazz guy, knew practically very little, if nothing, about jazz at the time. It just so happened, again, that he kind of hooked up with a fantastic sort of combo, and they created, I believe, his classic. So Van Morrison, Astral Weeks from 1968, really one of the spectacular second LPs. In fact, I would say one of the best second LPs of all time. Thanks again for liking and subscribing. Obviously, liking helps the video a lot. More people get to see it. And obviously, if you subscribe, you can see even more of Craig Danger than you ever thought you would want to see. That's not a threat of nudity, friends. Absolutely not. But anyway, while we're here, why don't you give me a second album that you love, that you think is absolutely classic, that people need to know about? Just put it in the comments, and I always love to get the recommendations from viewers here. Apparently, people who watch Craig Danger have great taste. 1968. Also, I believe from 68, 69, how about Delaney and Bonnie, Accept No Substitute, also known as the original Delaney and Bonnie with Accept No Substitute. Now, this album is really fun, really interesting, hugely sort of critically loved at the time. The story, of course, behind Delaney and Bonnie is, of course, they did actually have a first album that they released actually on the Stax label, as a matter of fact. But Delaney, very notable for his excessive drug use and really, from what I've read, really not being the greatest, most trustworthy guy you'd ever find. basically, they record this second album after signing with Elektra. Of course, they were still signed to Stax. So basically, Stax was just like, okay, these guys are idiots, releases them. They signed to Elektra. They basically record this album. Apparently, at the time, they played this album apparently for George Harrison. And George Harrison was like, oh, we love it. Let's sign you to Apple. Of course, they were already signed to Elektra. So that, unfortunately, did not work. But it actually got to the point where they actually did test pressings on this album for the Apple label. Never happened because, of course, again, this guy wasn't really respecting contracts, let's just say. But this album on the Elektra label is really a fantastic, really kind of a lot better than that first album. They're really starting to spread their wings on this one. Some really good ones on this one are Get Ourselves Together, Ghetto is a particular good one, also Gift of Love. But really, this whole album is really good. It was kind of, like I say, it was lauded, quite lauded at the time. And then, as a matter of fact, this did not sell all that well. It was like, charted somewhere in the like 180s, 170s in terms of chart position on the Billboard. But as kind of an epitaph to who Delaney was at that time, he basically apparently got in a huge argument with his label owner, Jack Holzman, who was actually in England at the time. And he called him on the phone angry that basically this album was not available in a record store in his father's hometown. And basically he said, you better fix this or I'm going to come and kill you. So anyway, they got dropped from Elektra pretty much right away because, probably don't, if you're an aspiring musician, maybe with like not a lot of success yet, probably don't tell your label owner that you will come and kill him if he doesn't fix something for you. Especially something as kind of goofy as, it's not in my dad's small town record store, so I might murder you. But anyway, Delaney Bramlett, again, I think if you asked 10 people about Delaney Bramlett, you would get 10 different stories. But anyway, that doesn't subtract from how great this record is. And certainly, again, it starts to, I believe, show a real step forward from that original LP on Stax and really kind of make way for Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, to Bonnie from Delaney, which in my opinion is their best, and then D&B Together, and then of course Motel Shot, etc. All those albums are a little superior to this one, but this one is a great one, and again, they're really kind of starting to hold their own here. Accept No Substitute, the original Delaney and Bonnie. Of course, this also would have to be the first appearance of Delaney and Bonnie and the Friends, which of course was Rita Coolidge and Carl Radle. Of course, Bobby Whitlock. So again, it's from 68, 69, Delaney and Bonnie, Accept No Substitutes. No, number 3 on this one of my favorites really of all time, Margie Joseph on the Volt label of Phase 2 from about 1970, 1971. Really a classic album. Margie sort of notable for being kind of a little bit Aretha Franklin, a little bit Dinah Washington, and unfortunately had a lot of potential, but really kind of never really got that hit I really feel like she deserved. This and her first album are kind of notable because they're both on Stax-oriented label, which of course is again the Volt label. But she happens to record Motown covers on both of them. This one she does My World Is Empty Without You by the Supremes, and then of course on the first album she recorded Stop in the Name of Love. A lot of huge sort of monologues on it and stuff, but this is really fantastic, produced by Fred Briggs. Again, I don't know who Fred is, but some fantastic work on this. For me, the jam on this one is That Other Woman Got My Man and Gone, which is, absolute banger. But Sweeter Tomorrow is on this one. There's a lot of great songs. This album is pretty much fantastic from cover to cover. And again, certainly Margie, this should have been a springing point for her career. It never really turned out that way. And unfortunately, after this, she would move on to the Atlantic label. And even with Arif Mardin and Jerry Wexler, really not very much in terms of success. They kind of saw her as a new Aretha. It just never really worked out that way. And like I say, these albums are all really good, but unfortunately, they just didn't sell much of any. And I would say Phase 2 is one of the best, and it of course is a spectacular second by Margie Joseph from, I believe, 71 on the Volt label. And another classic in my opinion. Although to be fair, they're all classics. This is a must-have in my opinion. Particularly, I would say, if you're looking for something a little bit more interesting than your sort of standard 60s fare, Scott Walker, Scott 2. This, of course, was huge in England. Actually went to #1 in England on the strength of a Jacques Brel song called Jackie. And if you know anything about Jacques Brel, very familiar vibes all over this one. And you know what? Scott Walker really kind of comes out and writes a lot more of the songs on this one. It is a step up from Scott 1. Of course, Scott Walker would release Scott 1, 2, 3, and 4, all kind of seen, at least in Britain, as absolutely classic albums. Would you might know Scott Walker if you're a North American? You might know him from the Walker Brothers. Big hit there would be The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore, Make It Easy on Yourself. They did have quite a few hits. He goes solo and just ends up being absolutely giant in England, particularly with a lot of renditions of Jacques Brel songs. So very kind of odd sound, but you know what I would say? Very orchestral, very interesting, croony, a lot of croony style music, but he just has a phenomenal voice. But on this album, some of those arrangements are stretching out a little bit. A lot of orchestral and sort of progressive vibes coming off of this one. And it is just a fantastic album. Again, as is all of the Scott 1 to 4s, but Scott 2, I think, is seen as kind of a point where he's absolutely kind of let loose a little bit more. So Scott 2 by Scott Walker. This one, of course, is a repress. It's on the Four Men with Beards label. But this is from around 68, 67 as well. Scott Walker, Scott 2, another classic, another spectacular second. Here's another one, and this would be the last one before. You know what? Hey, friends, if you're still hanging out, I'm going to lay down a bonus today. But I thought I wanted to show this record anyway. It's been a while. Brewer and Shipley. Now, if you don't know Brewer and Shipley, I think you should. The likelihood is you may know them from One Toke Over the Line, Sweet Jesus, which is a good song. Don't get me wrong. But these guys, very much, I guess, I can't really call them, they're a duo, and most of their singing is harmonizing. So it's not necessarily a Simon and Garfunkel type of thing. But you know what? Brewer and Shipley, really fun album, and actually really fun group. All of their albums are available out there, sometimes on the real cheap. And you know what? They're great singer-songwriters. Got a little bit of a gatefold in here. This is from 69, I believe, as well. Weird how everything is from 68 and 69 today. But yeah, really good album. Notable, I would say, for A Lady Like You kind of starts this one off. But of course, really fantastic versions of Witchy Tai Toe, which is really, really good. A cover of, I'm not exactly sure who did the original version of that one, but then also All Along the Watchtower is on this one as well. Very sort of moody piece, but again, very folky and great harmonies, as almost all of Brewer and Shipley's stuff has. This, of course, would be their second album, and I think it's probably one of their best ones. Their album that would follow this, of course, is Tarkio. Tarkio is notable for One Toke Over the Line. And you know what I would say? I would say almost any Brewer and Shipley album, if you like them, if you like their sound, you're gonna like them. There's just not a lot of highs, let's say, but there's definitely not a lot of lows. And yeah, Brewer and Shipley, Weeds from, I believe, 68 or 69. Fantastic album. And again, I think it's better than their first, and may even be superior to Tarkio. Although, of course, Tarkio sold way more, because One Toke Over the Line was, I believe, a number 11 hit across the country. So anyway, Weeds by Brewer and Shipley. And thank you for sticking around. I'm going to hit you up with a bonus here. This is a modern era album, which I rarely get to do. But I think it's one of my favorite second albums of all time. Talking about, of course, London Grammar, Truth is a Beautiful Thing. One is, of course, from 2017, and it would come about 3 or 4 years after their debut album. This album just absolutely rules. It absolutely is a giant step forward from that first album. And yeah, the band like matures big time. I mean, to be fair, when they initially recorded their first album, we're talking about in their young 20s. Here, this is just a much more adult effort, but really fantastic stuff. Rooting for You, Wild Eyed, Oh Woman, Oh Man. Those were kind of the singles. But Hail to the Liars is on this one. This whole album is really fantastic. It's hard to really kind of describe how or what they sound like. I would say very string laden. You know, people have said that they sound like the XX. I don't hear that at all. A lot of string laden stuff, a lot of sort of moody sort of under tracks with great piano, great guitar licks. But yeah, really, in the end, the key to this band is, of course, Hannah, the lead singer. Her voice is just kind of all over the place, but absolutely fantastic. Very classically trained sounding. And in fact, these guys are probably one of my favorite groups of the 2010s. To be fair, I don't have a lot of favorite groups from the 2010s, but London Grammar would be one of them. And this, of course, is a spectacular second. I also have their fourth album, which actually just came out this year. Really great album. And of course, their third album, I believe, is called California Soil. Also a great album. But in terms of the ones I have on vinyl, this one and the fourth one, and I still think that this one is an absolute masterpiece, really. London Grammar, Truth is a Beautiful Thing, from 2017 for the bonus. So yeah, so thank you for sticking around and checking out these spectacular seconds with me today. I'm Craig Danger, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see you on the next one.